committee, you will see this already down the list. It's quite a broad group of people, and we've got the A team working on this in terms of our external consulting firm that's been helpful to us in the past. So by next June 30, we'll hand the baton off from Charlie to the next admission dean. This is ranking season, the time of the year that most college presidents try to go on vacation or get out of town. It's been a good season for Olin. As you can see, U.S. News, which is usually a crapshoot, was very good to us. For 3 years in a row, we've been rising. That's going to get harder and harder to do now since there's only 2 more places to go. But, you know, we're always looking forward, so I'm really looking forward to it next year. Hopefully it'll be even better news. I also have colleagues at other institutions that had near heart attacks during this last week or so. By the way, you know, lest you get too excited about it, the U.S. News ranking for us does not include schools like MIT and Stanford and Berkeley. Ours is for those that do not have a PhD program. And it's based on one simple statistic. And that is a population survey, a sort of beauty contest that's sent to all the other deans of undergraduate schools of engineering, not the ones at MIT and Stanford and so on. So that's what we're looking at. That's our ranking score. So I wouldn't, you know, die if it didn't turn out to be #1 next year. The other ranking that I have up, and there's lots of other rankings too, is this Princeton review, which has been really good to us over the years and continues to be good to us. This is based on student surveys. A lot of the students at Olin participate. There are several 100,000 student surveys that are gathered by Princeton Review, and they don't rank, you know, this is the best college in America. They just look for trends in the responses they get from students. And when they see a very strong signal-to-noise ratio around one issue or another, they report that as something significant. And you can see that Olin shows up in 15 of these different categories. They're top 20 in the U.S., and some of them we should be really proud of. The #2 in the best classroom experience. Well, that's what Olin's about. This is our core business. It also has students study the most. This is not a party school. Maybe you haven't noticed that. Also, #4, professors get high marks. We're really proud of the professors that we have here, and there's a whole bunch of others. One that I'm really thrilled with, #19, in happiest students. When you get those two things together, students study the most and students are really happy, I think we're in a unique space in the universe. I don't know of another college on either list that shows up on both of them. So that's Olin's culture. Academic life. There's a lot of things going on under the hood in the academic program. So just going to give you a quick tour. Curriculum innovation. This is at the core of what we do. Remember, that's why Olin was created, to be innovative, particularly in the academic program. So you can see here a number of things that are underway, and we'll go into these in a little more detail, so I won't read them, except to point out the obvious. There's a challenge here, trying to create big new things in the curriculum, which is what you have to do if you're going to innovate, means that something has to go, because you can't just keep getting bigger. It's, you know, I've always thought of designing a curriculum as sort of like planning what you're going to put in your backpack for a 40-year hike. You can't put enough food to eat for 40 years. So you have to put something in there, but you have to learn how to forage along the way. And every time you put something in, something else has got to come out. And that's what's happening here too. So some of the major strategies that are currently underway include reinvigorate and reintegrate the entrepreneurship stream. This has been a concern of ours for a number of years, how to do a better job with our entrepreneurship program, and some real major steps moving forward are underway right now. In addition to that, we want to integrate science and society early in the educational experience. This is really important for Olin, as you know. We're an engineering school, but in a way, we're a liberal arts college that is focused on engineering. And making sure that we have that integration well done is critical to our identity. And then finally, to create an event space to enable innovation and fabrication to occur. You know, it's an interesting thing. Olin has this beautiful campus that was started from a blank sheet. All the buildings were built at once. Almost no college that you can think of has that characteristic, where the entire college was built in the same year. And as a result, the buildings all look like they were built at the same time and sort of consistent. What's really a surprise is that the academic buildings and the way they were laid out in the space doesn't match very well the kind of educational program that we offer. Seems like, why couldn't you get that right? You started from the beginning. And it's been a legacy. This happens every time that you start a new school. It takes like 4 or 5 years to build a campus, but you don't hire the faculty 4 or 5 years in advance. So the buildings are basically designed before there are any faculty here, before you even know what the curriculum is. So we inherited a building and we've been retrofitting it, and as a result, it doesn't have all of the right kind of integration, particularly a fabrication space for our project and design-based program. So faculty have taken that on as a project and have some really cool ideas for how to improve that. So going down the list here, the entrepreneurship program, some really interesting things are happening. Lawrence Neely. Lawrence, are you here by any chance?
No.
Since you're not here, I won't ask you to stand up. There you go. Lawrence has been leading the way in this entrepreneurship program. And he must have some pixie dust with him somehow, because look at the people he's managed to persuade to join him. They are, only at Olin would you find an entrepreneurship team that has a biologist, that has an anthropologist, that has a mechanical engineer, all these people working together to develop a course in entrepreneurship. That's integration in the large I. This also replaces a course that we've had in the past. So in the cannibalistic idea, you can only create big innovations if you drop something. We've dropped something from the program as well and replaced it with products and markets. Yeah, this is such a wimpy laser beam. I think it's probably not worth using. It's just a scale here that we're talking about. Another thing that's going on is better integration of the Science and Society early experience. Really cool new courses on the books. 6 microbes that change the world. Have a familiar ring to it. And they're also really spectacular team of teachers that are leading the effort. Jean Huang and Rob Mortello. Now, I would probably sign up to take anything that those 2 people offered. I think this is going to be a really exciting course. So there's a list there of 5 microbes, and you're supposed to guess what the 6th one is. So don't ask me. You're going to have to figure that one out yourself. Another project that's going on, of course, is to create and invent space to better integrate fabrication into our facilities here at Olin, so that it's not so disjointed. And a number of things are underway. As you can see this, it's a committee that's been formed, and Aaron Hoover and his team have been involved in trying to think through this from the beginning and sort of using a design process that Olin is known for to come up with ideas. And we've just added a new library director, Jeff Goldenson. I'm not sure. Jeff, are you here? Yeah, terrific. You should meet Jeff. He's really a terrific guy. He has wonderful ideas about what libraries should be, as opposed to just a place that you keep your books. A lot of cool things are going to happen in the library this next year as well. Okay, we've also changed the faculty search process. If you have a look at the advertisements that Olin uses to try to attract faculty members to Olin, you'll notice it's quite a bit different than the ones that they use, say, at Berkeley or at Harvard. And that sort of is a signal that what Olin expects faculty members to do is different. Innovation, interdisciplinarity, creativity, these are all sort of woven throughout. And the process has already rendered us some new results, including a new faculty member that's here already, Sarah Hendren. And so maybe you'll just wave at everyone so they'll know. Sarah has quite a bit of notoriety already outside of the campus and is very creative in the area of design, something that is dear to all of our hearts at Olin. Finances. No report on Olin would be complete without a discussion of our finances. Okay, so I have to carry you through this. It's particularly important this year that it's a shorter report than we've had in the past because the finances look actually quite good. Maybe you've noticed, but the stock markets did well last year in general. Now, of course, all the people are wringing their hands because the stock markets did well last year. So maybe it's only going to go down and so forth. But for the time being, things only went up. We had a great year. The endowment earned $50 million before we spent some for the college's operations, 14-point-something% gain. And our credit rating was reconfirmed by Standard & Poor's again in the rarefied air of very good investments for bond investors. In case that's your world. And my favorite graph. If you're a first time to Olin, you wonder what the heck this thing is. If you've been here before, you know we always do this graph in the auditorium. This is a graph of our endowment values over the years. Starting way back there on the left edge is September 2003. That's actually the first time that Olin had an endowment, which was all of the money to be transferred from the Olin Foundation. So they just gave it to us in little pieces. Finally, in September of 2003, it all arrived. So that's it. So that's our endowment history over all of history. You notice it got up to about 500 million at one point in 2007. And then there's this, debt, which you might have read about. It's called the Great Financial Recession. We had meetings in this auditorium where we watched that graph going like this, and people were looking at their retirement funds and dusting off their resumes and wondering what's going to happen. And luckily it turned around. Well, there's this red graph too. Now the red graph is the trailing 12-quarter average. So this is a moving average that takes 3 years into account. So the last 3 years, if you average those numbers out, what would it look like? That's significant because it's the red line that we use in order to determine how much the college can spend safely in our budget each year. We can only spend from the 12-quarter trailing average. And you'll notice that soon as the markets collapsed and went down, the red line was quite a bit higher than the blue line. And that saved our neck. So we didn't have to cut our expenses by 40% in 1 year. We could only cut them by, say, 10% and watch this thing develop. Well, the really significant part of this, and those of you who've been paying attention for the last few years, you'll notice, look at the end of this graph, 2014. The blue line is above the red line. Now, that's a very good thing. That's the one piece of metric that I use for Steve Hannaberry all the time. Okay. Whatever you do, make sure that the blue line is above the red line. Got that? Because if that stays that way, the red line is going to keep climbing, and our financial health will continue to grow. We'll be able to do new things, expand innovation, infect the rest of the world with creativity. So that's the main plan. That's all I'm going to say about finances at the moment. Marketing, development, family, alumni relations. A lot of things are happening here. We have a new vice president for development, family, alumni relations. So Mary Kay, would you stand up for a second? Yeah, welcome. If you haven't yet met Mary Kay, then you really need to. She's our eyes and ears out in the world, listening to all the people who really could make a difference for Olin. She needs to be able to tell our story, which is your story. So she can only tell stories she knows. Make sure you have a chance to talk to her. She's really a very interesting person. She comes to us from Seattle, the other coast, which a lot of our Olin students have found as well. So maybe by having her with roots there, we already have a down payment on the center of gravity for Olin's alumni universe, which seems to be in the Northwest. Okay, development, family, alumni relations, by the numbers. Last year, the development program generated $2 million, ending on June 30th. And about $1 million of that is in what we call core support, which actually helps us pay the bills for the things that we need to do. There's also $468,000 unrestricted, which allows us to meet needs as they arise during the year. That's a very important and growing part of the college's future, as you know. The other side of what happened when that blue line took the dip that we just looked at was that my job changed. Okay, so before the blue line dipped, my job was to think about education and try to get the rest of the world to agree with us. After that, I had a new job assignment, okay, and that's to reduce the dependence of our spending on the endowment. So do all those other things, but whatever you do, make sure that we don't wind up being more dependent on the endowment than we were the year before. It's a really important thing. So the only way you do that is that you generate other revenue streams like giving. So this is a very Olin thing to do. Every one of us is here today because of philanthropy. If it weren't for Mr. Olin's commitment to opening doors for the next generation, we wouldn't be here. And so this is now Olin's outreach effort to try and increase that trend. By the way, we're really, really proud of the culture of philanthropy that's already developed at Olin. The participation rate by alumni, by parents, and by friends of the school is really amazing. These numbers that you see are nation-leading numbers. I don't know of another college that has participation rates that are higher than this. This is a terrific tool for talking to people at private foundations and other places that we're trying to persuade to invest in us. They will often tell you, if your own community doesn't believe in you, why should we? And so we have a very strong and compelling case here to make because of you and your support. The revolution is on, okay? I need to start a little bit with this term, the revolution, which is relatively new. We thought of Olin's mission outside of the school as being focused on being a catalyst for change in other places. And that's what we've been doing for quite a while. But our board said a year ago, no, the world is changing rapidly, the need for Olin is growing, and we should be more bold about what we say. We should not hesitate to describe what we're doing as nothing less than leading a revolution. I was a little intimidated by that, naturally, kind of worried about credibility from audiences. And now, a year later, it's happening. Okay? It's happening everywhere that I've seen. Schools that never talked about this before are talking about it now. And my main concern is, will it happen before Olin gets out of the starting gate? I mean, what role will Olin play in this? Because everybody else is starting to make the change. So we have to be prepared to get out there, put our track shoes on, and get in the game. So what do I mean by this? Well, here's some of the under-the-hood activities that are part of the revolution-leading efforts that Olin's involved in. Taking education research beyond Olin. That's one of the ways that we change the way people think. And, you know, these two people, Debbie and Jenya, I'm not sure if they're in the audience at the moment, have been leading efforts to change the way people think about education for quite a while. They now have an NSF-funded 3-year program underway. As you can see, it's bringing students, it's bringing even teachers from other parts of the world to spend time here in the summers. So if you didn't know that about Olin, I think this is really cool. The teachers of teachers are here on our faculty. In addition to that, there's a new book that's coming out. One of the authors is Mark Somerville. Now, Olin faculty members have written a lot of books. This one is different in the sense that it's focused on the revolution in engineering education. It's the very thing that we are trying to lead. This book, which will be out on October 1, is also co-authored by David Goldberg, who was a faculty member at the University of Illinois, where many of these ideas have been picked up. The Olin type of approach to education has been picked up and implemented on a very large scale. So all 1,600 incoming students in engineering in Illinois are taking a co-design program between Illinois and Olin, and they're even trying to expand that beyond the incoming years to all 4 years and maybe even beyond engineering to all the other majors on their campus. And that program, that Illinois-Olin partnership, is described in the center of this book, which will also be the subject of the President's Council meeting next month. So I thought you should know about this. In addition, there are lots of events, and you should look at the dates that are bolded here. October 22, November 6, October 27. You'll be seeing people come and go on campus, and these are some of the things that are happening. In number one, in the upper left, the Frontiers in Education meeting, which is an international meeting, is going to be in Spain, I believe, this year. Olin is sort of embarrassingly overrepresented there. Okay, 25 faculty and students involved. That's probably on a percentage basis, I think that's probably larger than any other university in the country, in the world. And secondly, there are 12 different sessions at this meeting that have contributions from Olin, ranging from workshops to presentations by faculty and students. So we're out there planting seeds. Another thing that's happening on October 27 is this thing called the National Engineering Forum. This is a series of summit meetings. There are 10 of them so far around the country, sponsored by the Council on Competitiveness in the U.S. and also by Lockheed Martin. And Olin College has been asked to host the Northeast Summit meeting. So this is mostly corporate people. There'll be about 100-ish folks from around the region. They'll all be at Olin. There'll be a keynote speaker from Dassault Systems. Also, the president of the Council on Competitiveness will be here and will talk about the importance that engineering represents to the U.S. economy. And then on November 6th, another group called STEM Connector, which is a really broad-based community of corporations and also educators that are worried about STEM education in America. This particular group is going to be here to understand Olin as a model for the kind of change in STEM education that the country is looking for. This task force, by the way, is a group of corporate people who are trying to identify the skills that the next generation of engineers need that are currently missing from the educational curriculum around the country. So they're trying to develop a menu, a pattern of change that needs to happen across the country. So these are just things that are happening in the next month or two. There are also a lot of visitors that happen almost on a daily basis. I'm sure you know Sharon Breitbart is constantly looking for volunteers because we have people that are visiting. In fact, just before I walked into this auditorium, we had people here from Sweden who were interested in doing something similar. So this bar chart shows the number of visits that we've hosted, the number of people who visited that we've hosted between town meetings. So since the town meeting that we had in February, oops, wrong button, we have hosted 90 people. And as compared to what we had a year ago, that's essentially a 76% increase in the incremental change in visits. So the rate at which people are on their own discovering Olin, coming to visit us is still increasing. So the opportunities that we have to infect others with new ideas about thinking about education are still growing. We haven't peaked this out. Oh, by the way, cumulatively, in less than 5 years, but when we first started this, we have hosted 420 completely distinct institutions here who've come to visit us, and 1,200 people, most of them academics from other institutions. And about 70% of them, by the way, are from around the world. They're not from the US. So a lot of interest in change. One of our partners in this change is INSPIR, which is this Brazilian school in Sao Paulo. INSPIR started as a business school. It was a private business school in Sao Paulo, which is quite unusual. If you know anything about Brazil, most of their education is public education. In fact, it's federal education. It's not even state. And it's very good. At least the top Brazilian universities are very hard to get into. And they're free. But the interest in education for children is growing in Brazil faster than they have built federal universities, which creates a demand for private schools. And INSPIR was, the business school was established about the same time that Olin was. And it started from a standing start with no visibility at all to most recently it's been placed in the top 10 in Brazil among all business schools. They have this ranking system which is actually based on more than a beauty contest among deans. It has tests and stuff that students have to be able to perform in. They then decided to add engineering to their program, and they reached out to us, and we're in a multi-year arrangement with Sao Paulo and with INSPIR in particular to help them conceive and design and implement a new engineering school which is in lockstep integrated with their business program. And so that's what's going on. And what happened that's kind of unique and interesting here is while we've had faculty visits down there several times, several of us have been, this time we have students going down to help them. And so this group of 4 Olin students worked with the founding faculty at INSPIR to help them understand what design-based education looks like. And they proposed that the faculty members try this experiment on their own, pretend like they're students and try to actually experience it. Apparently, this hit the ball out of the park. What we're hearing from Brazil is, wow, that changed everything. These kids were amazing. Can't you send us some more? Maybe something like this could work in Brazil. Let's keep thinking. So once again, I think this kind of activity not only provides help for Brazil, but it also provides stunning learning opportunities for our own community. Another collaboratory activity that we have is with the University of Texas at El Paso. Some of you know that. For the last year or so, we've had visitors from El Paso on our faculty. We have a visitor this year from El Paso as well. So Stella, are you here in the audience? You want to just stand up for a second so everybody can welcome you? I'm always very envious when we get people here from the Southwest, particularly Texas. Most people who know me well know that Mexican food is my favorite thing. It's a little hard to find in New England. So someday I'm going to visit El Paso and get some pointers from Stella on where to eat. Our friends in Texas are doing some very interesting things. They're developing a new degree program parallel to the traditional bachelor's degrees, which is called Leadership Engineering. I think of it as kind of an honors course in engineering, and it has many of the Olin aspirations about creativity and design, entrepreneurship, and teamwork, and leadership. And this stream of faculty members that we've hosted from Texas are just amazing in their commitment to making change within a major university. And I'm sure all of you know, in many ways, it's a much easier thing to start with a blank sheet of paper and create something new than it is to start with a university that's got decades and decades of history and experience and how to make change within that environment. And that's what our colleagues are doing in Texas. So welcome. Okay, there's also a lot going around the world in other conversations that are in a more primitive state of development, and I'll just give you a thumbnail sketch. There's a summit meeting in Beijing, China next fall. This is a very high-level effort from the National Academy of Engineering, the Royal Academy of Engineering in the UK, and the Chinese Academy of Engineering in Beijing to try to elevate the horizons that engineers around the world think of when they think of what their job is. And the main focus is on the grand challenges of sustainability, security, global health, and raising the standard of living for all people on the planet. I've been involved in the development of that effort for the last 4 or 5 years now, and it's been quite an experience watching it. But I think you're going to find a really strong, resonant, and enthusiastic community in China for embracing the grand challenges. So you should not be surprised if we will have more visitors from that area about a year from now. The Kern Foundation is a private foundation in Wisconsin that's very interested in teaching engineers about entrepreneurship. They have discovered that Olin does that too. They've been quite interested in the way we do that, and they are in the process right now of trying to figure out how we can collaborate with them together. So you might see people from the Kern Foundation on campus. I was in Kyoto University in July, and actually I was in Tokyo in July and met the leaders of Kyoto University. And I discovered why it is that most of the pictures that you see about Japanese people, they include them carrying a fan. If you've ever been in Tokyo in July, you'll know how hot it is. Just steam bath constantly. So you take a shower before you go to the office, and by the time you get to the office, you've got moss growing on your back. It's just crazy. At any rate, they all dutifully wear dark suits and ties, I think, to bed at night. It's really quite amazing. And we had this ceremony where we signed an MOU, and the fellow right in the middle in this picture is their version of Arnie Duncan, the Secretary of Education for the country, and we're in his office there. And the fellow just to his right is Dr. Matsumoto, who's the president of Kyoto University. This is one of those things I didn't have enough advising before I walked into the room, and I discovered on the way into the room that there were going to be speeches given, and I was one of the people going to be giving a speech. So I had this translator next to me, and he said, I just want to talk to you for a minute. He says, I want to know the biggest words you're going to use in your speech so I can translate them. I said, what speech? I can guarantee you they will not be big words. So everybody else's was in Japanese. I had no idea what they said about it. Anyway, we're now good friends with Kyoto University. Even the highest levels of the government knows about this. So we'll see how this works. We also have other things going on in Brazil. It turns out that there's a large-scale effort across Brazil to change engineering education. INSPIR is just one point on the spectrum. There's also a group called ITA, which is essentially their Air Force Institute of Technology, which has been a very effective, highly selective institution, which is leading this charge together with the Brazilian Industry Association. And they have a program which would change engineering education over about 5 years. It's very broad-based, starting with the federal universities. That's underway. We'll have visitors here in about a week from the UK, where a new university is being founded in Hereford, in partnership really with 3 other of the R11 universities there. I believe it's Warwick, Bristol, and Sheffield. So the 3 of them are creating a laboratory school very much like Olin, and they're interested in Olin's advice. And of course, Singapore Polytechnic, who we've been working with for quite a while, is about to burst out into 10 different countries in Southeast Asia to spread the Olin model to everyone else. They're just very enthusiastic, and they believe they know how to do this, and so we're quite interested in watching that. Within the U.S., we've seen sudden interest among the deans of major universities who've reached out to Olin. UC Berkeley, Ohio State University, both of them we have conversations going on, and the University of Michigan, which will involve Olin in October. I don't know how deep these conversations will go, but they're certainly interested in what we're doing. So that's just a whirlwind tour of some of the things that are going on. Now, there are many other things going on too at the school. And that's what I had to tell you this morning. So at this point, I will stop and I'll take questions, if there are any. Yes?
Is this, so I know the draft visitors is going on. Is it unusual to have interest from Ohio State, Michigan, all the places that have been Verizon? Is that something, I don't know, maybe one first year, so I don't know which one. Is that something that's new, or is that something that tends to come and go?
Yeah, so let me repeat the question so that others might hear. Particularly, I think this is involving the internet and the streaming live. So I believe the question is it, how unusual is it that you might get questions from people like Berkeley and Ohio State and Michigan about engineering education? Wouldn't it just be normal for people to ask those questions? It's a very good question. It turns out that it is quite unusual. That I think what happens in large universities is, in general, they have a very broad mission. It's a broader mission than what we do. So it's not about just undergraduate education. It's also about graduate education and generating new research. And most of those universities are heavily dependent on federal funding for research, and that's given a lot of attention. So they do worry about education, but only periodically. I know when I was the Dean of Engineering at the University of Iowa, for example, we worried about reinventing education about once a generation. Okay, so about every 25 years, they would take seriously the idea of maybe we should change something in the courses that we teach. And what's interesting is we have been here at Olin for at least 15 years. There hasn't been any interest in this from these particular leading schools until now. And now they're all interested in it, okay, at the same time. And in fact, from talking to their deans, I'm quite convinced that the deans have put their credibility on the line with a deadline, a budget, and a certain set of priorities. And whatever happens is going to happen. They'll put a check in that box, and they'll say, okay, we've done that now. And then it'll be a long time before this issue comes up again. So that's what I say. There's a window of opportunity for Olin to be influential in the way they think about the changes that could be made. Any other questions? Come on, this is Olin. This is all about questions. Yeah, here we go.
All right, so I'm a senior this year, so I've seen a few of your red line, blue line charts. And for the first 2.5 years that I was here, every time that chart came up, we said, all right, when we get to this point, we'll talk about the scholarship again. Kind of stopped talking about that. And it looks like the blue line is back to where it started. And I understand that the red line is still below that. But at what point are we going to start having that conversation again
About what?
about bringing the scholarship back?
Yeah, we have that conversation about bringing the scholarship back every day. Okay? What will it take to bring the scholarship back? I can sort of replay the tape here on this. In order to provide us the full tuition scholarship for all the students at Olin, it will take a minimum of $150 million, and designated for that purpose. We are currently out talking with people about how to raise money towards that goal today. How you would implement it if you only got $1 million is another question. Whether you give everybody 50 cents and say, you know, it's better than it was last year, or whether you wait and give somebody 100% there and others nothing, we don't know. We're still working on that. The best way, in fact, pragmatically, the way this is going to happen, I believe, is that people who care about Olin the most care more about Olin than they care about changing education, because that's the other message that Olin brings. But people who care about Olin will eventually help us find private resources in one lump sum that will enable us to move the bar up to that level. That's constantly on the menu when we talk to people. But honestly, if I go to, you know, Bill Gates and talk to him about all the different things that we're doing, he's less interested in restoring the full tuition scholarship at Olin than he is in changing education in America. So it depends on who the donor is. Perhaps an Olin alum at some point who remembers the full tuition scholarship in the past and has a very strong feeling about the value of merit-based aid would help us at that point to bring it forward. So anyway, thank you for reminding me that this is an issue, and it's on the menu now. It's simply an uphill battle to get people with that much money willing to make an investment. Okay, another question in the back?
Hey Rick, we've done very well in admissions with and with our student body with achieving gender equity. We've done very well with that. We've done less well with diversity, and in particular with serving underprivileged students and getting those underprivileged students into the college. Is the sort of board and president level and everybody aware of this issue, and do you have thoughts on how we can try and move in a better direction on this?
Yeah, that's a really important point. Olin does not lead the nation in its enrollment of underrepresented minorities. We're not close. We are comparable to other very selective schools, but we are not a leader in the way that we are with women. This is something we've talked about a lot. It's something that shows up in the boardroom as well. It's a concern that we all have. It's a very difficult problem to solve. And I can tell you a couple of things that have been thought about and why we haven't gone there yet. If you look at successful models for recruiting, for example, underrepresented minorities, they'll point to the fact that the social network that a new student has plays an important role in their success. It may play a larger role than test scores and all the sorts of things that we measure during Candidates Weekend. A program that's been that we've been watching that's really quite effective is called the Posse Program. I'm not sure if you're aware of this program, where what happens is they bring a cohort of students in together from a community rather than bringing them in one at a time. And if they bring like 10 students who know each other, who are from the same city, they've gone through the same sort of educational experience, even though their test scores might not be the same as everyone else, there's evidence to show that that actually works, that you can get students who actually show up on the honor roll at graduation at other universities. Now, you don't have to think very long to realize that bringing in a cohort of 10 as a unit would be a major change in our admission program, right? Candidates Weekend would look different if we had a decision that you had these 10 people come as a unit. They're a family now. We were going to admit the whole family, you don't admit any of them. That's a problem. That stopped us in the past. You know, we've also thought about, well, wait a minute. Babson uses a Posse program. Is there some way that we could have a Posse that extends over all 3 campuses? And you know, so this has been a puzzle. But I think there's something to that. that community-based admission and cohort building for people that are unfamiliar with our neighborhood might have some merit to it. So that's an important thing. I've also thought that until we have a deeper candidate pool, it's very hard to make much progress on that. If you just look at the numbers, the percentage of students that would be comfortable in our classrooms trying to be competitive, who come from these different groups, is small, the percentages. So in order to get the raw numbers that you need to push it up, you need a really long list of candidates. We have a longer list today than we did last year. We have 1,000. But if you wanted to, increase by 10 the number of people who would be comfortable competing in our environment, you'd have to have a much larger candidate pool than we have now. So there's a lot of work in front of us. It's an issue that's important to a lot of us. We just are struggling for models that will work, that won't destroy the community that we've built. Thank you for asking the question. It's very important.
Along those lines, I was wondering what we've done to diversify economically our students. Because it's not just racially minority students, it's really the economic issues that students have that keep them from coming here.
Yeah, that's another good point. Olin, in fact, is already in a position where economically it presents less of a barrier to disadvantaged students than almost all of our competition. And this is because of both the fact that Olin is one of a shrinking list, and a small list to start with, of institutions that provides need-blind admission and full need-based aid. In addition to that, we have this half-merit scholarship. The Boston Globe, who sometimes is friendly to us, wrote an article in January about students leaving college and how much debt they had. And it turns out that of all the colleges in Massachusetts, Olin had the smallest percentage of students who had any debt at all. And the average debt of those who did have any debt was lower than that at any other college. So I think we're starting from a good spot. It doesn't mean that we've got the problem solved, but it means that we have a down payment, at least in that direction. There are national concerns about attracting students from underrepresented groups and also from economically disadvantaged groups to go to elite colleges. And there are lots of factors involved. One of them, and I think this is where it gets beyond the numbers, I don't think that Olin is too expensive for students who are, say, first-generation college students to consider. But having come from a community myself where it was very rare for students to go to college, there are lots of other factors involved too. Distance away from home is an important issue. And I know in some communities, they don't know anyone in their family who's been to a college. And the ones that they do know, the problem is that those kids went off to a college somewhere far away and nobody ever saw them again. They didn't come back. And so there's sort of a social pressure to stay close, and maybe you shouldn't go there. And there's also values involved. There are lots of factors in it. I personally think we could do a lot more in this area. And I think that Mr. Olin himself was a good example of a first-generation person who went to college. I would not be unhappy if we could find a way as an institution to specially recognize people who are from families where they are the first person in their family to go to college. Another question right here.
Are you, in the same vein, are you thinking about offering a full tuition scholarship for kids who do come from disadvantaged families? I imagine that kids who do come from these families in colleges are looking to recruit them.
Maybe you could repeat that for our audience.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to ask if Olin would consider giving a full tuition scholarship or a very hefty scholarship to kids who do come from these first-generation families or disadvantaged areas. So I would imagine that even with the half tuition scholarship and any need-based financial aid, the brightest kids who are coming from these disadvantaged situations are going to get very, very attractive offers from competitive schools, as many schools are looking to attract them to increase their diversity.
Yes, so this is why we think that need-based aid exists. This is the whole point. So if a student applies to Olin and they don't have the resources to pay half of the tuition The process that we use now will provide them full scholarship to go here for free, provided their family need meets the criteria in actually the federal forms. Now, I think you can go beyond that, and you can say, well, federal form is not perfect. You know, some people who show up as not having need on the federal form really do have need in some other ways, and I understand that. And that's a continuing conversation and discussion along the way. But our intent is to lead the country in being generous in providing need-based financial aid for kids who have need. And we're small enough that we can talk about that and to work on it on a case-by-case basis. I personally don't think that Olin is at the back of the pack of universities when it comes to providing the financial resources for families that need it in order to enroll in Olin. I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is more making people aware of Olin from those communities and helping them feel comfortable about applying here to begin with. That's a much bigger problem. Actually, I can see Jean here nodding her head. Jean is the person who knows more about need-based financial aid at Olin than anyone else. She runs that program. Would you be comfortable adding to this?
I was nodding because I completely agree with you that it's about having students apply to Olin, know about Olin, be interested in Olin, and then move them to the status of being accepted, and then we will fund them. If somebody has need, we will fund them. So it's getting the students to apply. That's the issue.
So let's just deputize everybody in the room. Maybe you should all think about identifying at least one potential Olin candidate for admission from a family where they would be the first person in their family to go to college, and you expect that they would have need. And let's see if we can increase the candidate pool that way. Another question?
So I know that when Olin started, there was a lot of missions to have students in different colleges, but it's very difficult for students to study abroad. What are we doing now today?
Well, that's a good question. I think this, maybe you can repeat the question for our video audience.
So the question is, I know when Olin originally started, the mission was for students to study at other colleges while they're here. But right now it's very difficult for students to study abroad, so I was wondering what we're doing as a college to make study abroad a better experience easier for students.
Well, encouraging students to study abroad is a very important element. It was one of the founding concepts from the beginning of Olin, as you pointed out. Olin has, I believe, about 25 to 30% of the kids who graduate have had a study away experience before they graduate. At least those are the last numbers that I remember. I also remember concerns about this issue in previous meetings. We've had, in fact, formed a group of faculty, staff, and students to talk this through, the task force on study away, and I believe that's still in process at this moment. I'm not sure whether it's finished yet. Do you know, Vin?
Actually, I'm going to go pass the buck to Rayanne, but just in general, that last year's group focused on what we were doing internally that were sort of internal blockages as opposed to starting new programs, and some substantial progress was made on that and being implemented this year, and now that group is going to the more strategic levels, and Rayanne and John Adler are working on that, but maybe Rayanne can say a few words.
I think you sort of captured it. So last year, the committee focused on looking at our study away program, what was working, what was challenging, what the options were for what we could be doing with the structures that we currently have, and what we aspire to do if we can create some change in that space. And so lots of people were involved in that. This year, we're focused on taking the report that was generated by the group and implementing the things that we can implement there. So if anyone's interested in seeing the information from the report, we're happy to share it, and so just be in touch with me, and we're happy to do that. And I think you'll also see we're trying to, we all agreed, and I think we're all in the room in agreement that being able to study away for folks that want to do it, and sometimes encouraging folks to do it even if they're not quite sure, it's a really valuable part of an educational experience for folks that want to do it. And so increasing our efforts to share what that experience is about, how it can dovetail with what students are doing here. I think sometimes that comes up as an issue, like, oh, I can't leave Olin because X, Y, or Z. So dispelling some of those myths is also part of the effort that we're going to be undertaking too. So
Another question in the back?
Thank you. There was a question about students at Olin going out to other places to study away. And there is also another side of that coin, which is Olin as a destination for exchange students. And I'm wondering, and this might have been covered on an exchange student advisory meeting that I've had to miss because I was actually away. But I'm wondering if you could share with the audience what is our vision for being a destination currently, and is that linked to how many people go away and how many people come in, or where is that process going, just so we can know the future of the exchange program eternally?
Yes, I think, well, let me start this by saying I personally have done quite a bit of travel in the last few years, spent time on other continents and other campuses, and there's a sense in which I believe American students may be the most culturally deprived students on the planet. Since, for example, we almost all speak only English, most other countries are very fluent in more than one language. We also know very little about what happens to the west of San Francisco and to the east of New York and to the south of Florida. That's not common. Other countries know a lot more about us than you would think. And I think in the next generation, our graduates are going to work for companies where their primary markets are abroad, and they're going to be asked to spend the next 3 years in Beijing. And, you know, if you hesitate, that job will go to someone else. Being comfortable with that, being enthusiastic about that is not something that happens instantaneously. That's something that needs cultural development. And so I think this whole area of study away for Olin and also welcoming people from other cultures is critical to providing the breadth of education that Olin needs. At this point in time, I can tell you, and in fact all the students who come to our house for dinner know this, they don't get out of the house before I'm asking them about where they're going to study away and what's keeping them from doing that and where they're going and why, and the same sort of speech. And we do have a high percentage, at about 25 to 30% of our students going. You know, the national average for engineering is closer to 5%. It's very low. And so Olin is not the leader, but we're much better than average in that area now, but we're not where we need to be. And I think until we can get to the point where we say double the percentage of Olin students that go abroad, we will benefit in the interim from having a robust group of visitors, exchange students from other countries. Now, as I say this, I'm worried about daggers being thrown at me from Rayanne and from Vin and from others, and from those on the faculty that have to deal with these students and may not be as well prepared in some areas. They're not, remember, they didn't go through Canvas Weekend to get here. Nevertheless, I think they add a whole new way of thinking when they are here. But there's a limit to how many of them we can host at the same time. That's really the problem. And so we have to listen hard to our faculty who identify the special problems when it just gets to be too many. Or these students need care and feeding. You can't just dump them out and expect that they will know what to do. So there's time involved and there's relationships involved in order to making it a successful experience for the visitors as well as for our own students. But I think the benefits are huge. So I don't have a formula. We don't have, next year we're going to have X. But I can tell you we're very hesitant with every one of these partner schools that visit us to even have the conversation about entering into an automatic exchange program with Kyoto University, for example. We won't go there. We may exchange faculty, if they're interested, but we probably won't accept more than ones or twos of students from these other universities for that very reason. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions? Well, I noticed, here's one. We're at 12, so this will be the last question. Sure.
So I was pleased to hear that wedding together science and society, those questions is one of the big features on the agenda for continuing to think about curriculum here, and I can think of lots of ways that that could be creatively done, precisely at a place like Olin and what it affords and the kinds of faculty who are here. But could you speak a little bit more about what you'd like to see, what you think is really urgent in coupling these things more closely than just having, for instance, bioethics as this complementary idea out here and the real work of building things over here? I know we don't want that, so how can it look really strong? What are the critical issues?
Yeah, thank you. Unfortunately, you touched on one of my passions, which could wind up being a 30-minute talk, so I've got to be very careful about this. But this is the whole reason why I've been personally committed to the grand challenges. The sustainability, the security, the global health, and the increasing standard of living as the population increases. And I think this is an urgent issue. We're not educating the next generation globally to deal with the complexity of these issues. The problems don't come with little labels on them. It's I'm an engineering problem, or I'm a sociology problem. They're just problems, and they all involve people. And I think if you look at a graph, and I'd sort of ask anybody who's interested in this to do this, it's so easy to do now with Google, pull up a graph of global population over all of human history. It looks like a hockey stick, okay? It's been less than 1 billion people forever, until about 1920, when it crossed 1 billion. Today it's 7 billion. It's going to be 9 billion by 2050. There isn't one aspect of human existence on the planet that isn't going to be affected by this change in population. As people grow, sustainability, global health, security, as resources become weak, and every generation grows up expecting to live at least as well as the previous generation. Do you see a conflict here? By the way, these problems are not American problems. These are the global problems. And unless we can learn to develop systems thinking across boundaries, across disciplines, across political time zone boundaries, and talk to each other as humans, members of the same human family, I don't think there's any hope going forward. It all starts with education. So we need to begin now to blur the boundaries between what disciplines mean, to get people focused on important problems, the problems bigger than us, and dedicated to making a difference with their life. And I think if we did that on a global level, we would make some progress. This is also behind the initiative that Olin has led to develop Babson Olin Wellesley as a virtual university, so that we have access to the resources, to the people who think about these problems in different ways from engineering. So I'm personally very passionate about it. We can go have lunch sometime and I'll tell you more. Okay? Prissy, this is the last of the last questions.
I don't have a question, I just want to do a final plug for our alumni weekend this weekend.
Okay, you want to get a microphone first so everybody can hear you?
Just really quick, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Christy Raposa, Director of Family and Alumni Relations here. And I wanted to do a final plug for Alumni Weekend. This weekend we have over 100 attendees RSVP'd. We have nearly 60% of the 5-year reunion class, the class of 2009, coming, and over 20 alumni from the other classes. So they're very excited to see all of you, and I hope you're just as excited to see them. We have a whole weekend of fun activities planned, so please join us.
Terrific. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a terrific semester.